On June 23, 1996, Nintendo ushered its Japanese fans into a new era of three-dimensional gaming, alongside the release of their latest and most ambitious console yet, the Nintendo 64.
Yet that millions of kids already know what they want for Christmas, a new video game system called Nintendo 64.
As Nintendo's third home console, the N64 was the entryway to 3D graphics far beyond what the SNES was capable of. While Mode 7 and the Super FX chip achieved new heights for 3D graphics, the N64 was meant to take it far beyond previous levels. Coining the term get in or get out, the N64 raised the bar for not only themselves, but the industry as a whole. Development of the Nintendo 64 began with a partnership between Nintendo and hardware and software developer Silicon Graphics, under the name Project Reality. Conflicting reports state that Nintendo was actually Silicon's second choice for their first foray into the console market, only behind Sega. According to CEO of Sega of America, Tom Kalinske, Sega was approached by Silicon with a prototype CPU that would ultimately be refused due to the increasing amount of hardware deficiencies discovered by their engineers. Nintendo would later deny this conclusion, stating that Silicon chose Nintendo merely because they were a more appealing business partner than Sega. One of the major challenges Nintendo faced with the 64 was figuring out exactly how they could familiarize players with traversing a 3D environment, a challenge that would be faced head-on by the N64's most prominent launch title, Super Mario 64. From the beginning of Mario 64's development, perfecting Mario's movement was top priority. Development began with fleshing out Mario's movements in a 3D space before any level design was considered. In a 2001 interview conducted by NGC Magazine, programmer Giles Goddard stated, "He was wandering around a simple grid to start with, just picking stuff up, dropping stuff. The animation was quite central to what he was doing. A lot of the animation was actually in there before any of the game. The Mario that Miyamoto had running around basically looked as he did in the final version. In regards to how much thought was put into Mario's movement, most of Miyamoto's time is spent on that, and the movement of the camera. His main job is to sit down with the programmers and play with controls and camera and shape the way the game feels. That is fundamental to the entire game." Because Mario 64 was being developed alongside its system, it played a big part in deciding the controller's final design. For the first 6 months of Mario 64's development, developers were limited to testing Mario's movements on a keyboard running on an Onyx emulator provided by Silicon before any hardware was available. These would later be replaced with modified Sega controllers until various controller prototypes were tested. Many of the prototypes involved the central analog stick and yellow directional face buttons used to control the camera, a format carried over to the final model of the controller. The Nintendo 64 had its fair share of peripherals and add-ons extending the life of the system, the most popular of which being the Transfer Pack, Rumble Pack, and Expansion Pack, which were either plugged into the back of the controller or onto the console itself. Each of these devices were bundled with their associated games in order to access new features or stabilize performance. The Transfer Pack was bundled with Pokemon Stadium in order to allow players to transfer Pokemon teams from Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow to Stadium, as well as sending teams from Gold, Silver, and Crystal to Pokemon Stadium 2. The Rumble Pack was included with Star Fox 64 in order to provide a sense of haptic feedback, as the controller would vibrate rapidly when Fox's R-Wing took damage, and the Expansion Pack was bundled with every copy of Donkey Kong 64 to fix a bug that prohibited the game from running without it. However, none was more infamous than the 64 disk drive, a magnetic disk reader that plugged into an extension port on the underside of the console. The 64DD was used as a supplementary add-on that could implement a real-time clock, connect to the internet, and act as expanded data storage. As ambitious a project it was, the device was plagued with delays during development and would ultimately become a commercial flop much akin to the Virtual Boy. The 64DD saw only 10 software releases exclusive to Japan, among which include SimCity 64, Dojin the Giant, an expansion for F-Zero X, along with various segments of the Mario Artist compilation. Because the 64DD failed so early, many projects were canceled or saw new light as ports to other systems or as normal N64 games. Some of these include Earthbound 64, Paper Mario under the name Super Mario RPG 2, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask under the name Zelda Gaiden, and Ura Zelda, an expansion to Ocarina of Time that would reveal new content cut from the original release due to time constraints and cartridge space. The IP Animal Crossing also started as a project for the 64DD in order to take advantage of the system's in-game clock, and would later be finished as a Japanese N64 exclusive, titled This, or Animal Forest. Instead of relying on the 64DD, the full release featured an in-game clock within the cartridge itself. Animal Forest would later be ported to the GameCube as Animal Forest Plus, or what would be considered the first real Animal Crossing game to audiences outside of Japan. Reception of the Nintendo 64 was generally positive, as critics praised its use of 3D graphics and gameplay. However, a few setbacks would cause the system to be massively outsold by Sony's PlayStation, one of which being its lack of third-party titles. Instead of upgrading to a CD-ROM-based system for game storage like their competition, Nintendo decided to stick with their tried-and-true cartridge format in an effort to avoid slow load times. This led to a slew of problems and obstacles faced by third parties developing games for the N64, including manufacturing costs and time, forcing developers to predict the demand for games weeks or months away from their release. Some developers skipped out on the 64 entirely, including Square, who terminated their partnership with Nintendo in favor of developing Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation. While the Nintendo 64 suffered from many blunders throughout its lifespan, its legacy remains as the pioneer that produced countless classics, among which have been considered some of the greatest of all time. Games like Ocarina of Time, Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, and Super Smash Bros. That would spawn countless re-releases and sequels. Well, that's all we have for you today, but come back next time and we'll see you again on another day in gaming history.
Thank you so much for playing my game.